SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to OptimumCBD.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs.
Yeah, we're in the middle of that test match, the cricket, so no point going into detail in that.
That rainy test match?
Yeah, the rainy test match, the end of day 3, so we'll kick on with the rugby league, eh?
Yeah, everyone's, all the Indians are hoping just for rain.
Yeah, well, I think that's all they've got to rely on for the rest of this game. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. Rain might save them, but...
it's day 4, yeah?
Yeah, we're recording this before the start of the 4th day for anyone watching, so forgive us if you're watching this after that test match finishes.
Spoiler alert, if you haven't started watching it, it rained. Who the hell doesn't want it? It's not like rugby league or whatever where you're like, oh, don't tell me the score until I get home. Dude, if you've missed 3 days of a test match. But over in rugby league, Ezra Mam's pled guilty and he's just being let off. I see it as he's just been let off. So a guy who was driving unlicensed while under the influence of drugs or alcohol caused an accident by driving in the wrong lane, going head on into another car, causing 2 injuries in the other people in the other car. Goes to rehab, pleads guilty, gets an $850 fine and a further 6 months suspension on his license.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if I ever need a lawyer, I'll be seeking out Ezra Mam's lawyer, getting him he only got, as you said, only an $850 fine, disqualified for at least 6 months. I'll tell you what, it's a far cry from that lawyer who said he was in line to get 14 years in jail. I don't know who that bloke is. I certainly won't be hiring him as my lawyer if he thought Ezra Mam was going to get 14 years in jail.
The police didn't end up charging him with anything. That's the main problem. You know, like
no conviction recorded, right? Yeah. So that's just absurd. This is a very serious crime, and it could have been a lot more serious had there been serious injury or even death suffered by the passengers of the other vehicle. The passengers in that Uber that he crashed into could very easily have been serious injury or death suffered by those passengers. So, unbelievable, all the circumstances when you think about it. As you said, driving unlicensed, driving on the other side of the road, hitting the other vehicle head on with drugs in his system. For him to walk away with this slap on the wrist punishment is just ridiculous. It's absurd. And, he should be counting his lucky stars. He's a very lucky man. He's lucky he's not in... He's lucky his contract hasn't been torn up by the Broncos. And he's also lucky he hasn't gone to jail here.
So it looks like it's going to be Reece Walsh, Ezra Mam, Adam Reynolds, Ben Hunt. For the Brisbane Spine.
Yeah, I mean...
Ezra's going to get nothing. The NRL and everything was talking about 14 weeks possible suspension, but now they're not going to be able to really give him anything, are they?
Well, how do you justify giving him 14 weeks now that no conviction's been recorded?
Yeah. He can get away with nothing. I just don't believe it. I don't understand. It's obviously because he's famous, high profile, and was able to afford a good lawyer, but what kind of message does that send even from the justice system? If you're famous and you can afford a good lawyer, you're allowed to drive around with, having cocaine is illegal, right? And if you test positive for cocaine, you've obviously had cocaine.
So that in itself is illegal, let alone driving a car unlicensed as well, let alone driving on the other side of the road, let alone crashing into the oncoming vehicle and injuring the passengers.
And they just chose the judicial system chose to charge him with nothing and just basically, he went to rehab He worked a day on the tools. Was he the one that worked a day on the tools?
Well, he did it, and Josh Addo-Carr did it as well.
And that means you didn't do anything bad?
Well, that seems to be the go, doesn't it? If you're in a spot of bother, just work on the tools for a day. Josh Addo-Carr did that, and he picked up another club, signed with Parramatta. Ezra Mam's done that, and he's escaped with a slap on the wrist. So anybody who's in legal trouble, just go work on the tools for a day and get someone to take a photo of you doing it, and you'll escape with a slap on the wrist.
It's demented because it doesn't set precedent. Like, if I went out and got on the coke and then crashed into a person and then was unlicensed, am I now going to get $850 and no conviction recorded?
Yeah. The punishment is supposed to act as a deterrent to doing it. This light punishment of that $850 fine disqualified for at least 6 months from driving.
He was already disqualified.
I mean, the punishment is supposed to hit hard to stop you from, well, A, to stop you from doing it in the first place, and B, if you have been stupid enough to do it, to stop you from ever doing it again. An $850 fine for someone on hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, I mean, that's nothing. That's just loose change.
Yeah, the license suspension is also really demented because it's like he was already suspended. So he obviously already did things to get his license suspended, and he ignored it and continued to drive and did worse. Like, you got to think, how many times did he drive off his nut on coke before without having an accident while unlicensed?
It's likely that wasn't the first time.
Yeah. And so it is like super disappointing from everything. And yeah, like the league now doesn't have to do anything. Brisbane Broncos don't have to do anything. They can just say, well, Ezra's a good kid. He's learnt from his mistakes. And we know he's going to be better, and we'll come back and show it to everyone.
Yeah, when he's your superstar 5'8", who you can't afford to sack because he's such a key player, it's amazing how you're willing to go, oh, he's a changed man, and, he's done his rehab. He's, apologetic about it. But as we've said a few times, had it have been a fringe player, they could have done without. Well, all of a sudden the club may not be so sympathetic to the player, and the player might be sent on his way.
Yeah, now they're just going to do nothing.
Yeah, it was Canberra lawyer Tom Taylor who said that Ezra Mam could have got 14 years in jail. So if I ever get in legal trouble, I won't be hiring Tom Taylor from Canberra to defend me, that's for sure.
I can't believe the police didn't charge him with anything. That's where it all falls down. The police just decided not to charge him with anything. And I really wonder...
No conviction recorded.
I really wonder what the people who he hit think.
Yeah, he injured I think she was a 4-year-old girl. He injured, I think she suffered a broken hip. And... I think the Uber driver was injured as well, and I think the woman, I'm presuming the mother of the child, she was injured as well. So the 3 occupants of the vehicle were suffered injury in the accident. Could easily have been far worse. Could easily have been catastrophic for Ezra Mam had they suffered, as I said, had they suffered more serious injury or even died in the crash. Those passengers.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The second I saw it, I just thought that's the worst thing. Really. Unbelievable. Yeah, everyone's expectation was he would get in trouble. But really, he didn't get in any trouble.
Yeah. It's hard to... I'd love to hear from a legal type on this as well. Like, how do you justify... Like, the punishment clearly doesn't fit the crime here. How could that be justified... From a legal standpoint? There's too much weight given to this, oh yeah, I checked into rehab. But who cares about that? The offence is the offence. What you do after it, that's irrelevant. You can make it look like you're all, remorseful by going to rehab. But what's done is done. You've committed the offence, and it is what it is. There's far too much bearing given to this rubbish line of, oh yeah, I checked into rehab, it's all good, I'm so remorseful for what I've done.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I read about a lot is the character references.
The character reference doesn't change what he did.
Yeah.
His coach or whoever can say he's a good guy, That doesn't change the offence he committed.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. It just says, he's sorry. Yeah, I know he's sorry, but he still did it. It's like we always said, like, this is not one that he can say, I didn't do it.
No.
You know, and they just chose to charge him.
No, it was on video. There's no getting away from it.
One where, like, Josh Addo-Carr kept saying, still to this day apparently says, I didn't do it. But Ezra Mam, like, you can't say I didn't do it, you know? You just can't. And police choosing to not charge him with anything is where it all falls down to this. Like, they chose to charge him with lesser crimes, so he pled guilty to lesser crimes, and then... What? Yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
I guess you got to think that those injuries mustn't have been too serious, but that's just lucky on his part. That's just complete good luck that the injuries weren't more serious.
As a driver, I don't really want coked up, unlicensed people driving around on the road.
No.
You know, like that's the
thing.
No,
and you don't want somebody, driving on the other side of the road and crashing into you head on.
Like, that's the thing. And that's the reason I don't want coked up, unlicensed drivers driving around on the road, because they're likely to drive on the wrong side of the road and crash into me. He was unlicensed. This is the thing. Like, it's just further 6 months unlicensed. He's got history. You don't get unlicensed, like your license suspended for no reason. So he's got history as well as driving, driving badly or he has a driving record or whatever, and then just goes out and drives anyway. And then they're like, your license is now suspended for 6 further months. Is that going to stop him from driving? Honestly, I think we've got history showing it won't.
Yeah, well, if you get only an $850 fine and only a further 6 month suspension for doing what he did, well, then he'll just drive unlicensed again because he knows that he'll get a slap on the wrist like he did. Well, he got a slap on the wrist for something far more serious than just driving unlicensed this time. So next time, if he just drives unlicensed, he knows that, well, if I get caught just doing that, well, it's going to be even more of a slap on the wrist than this punishment.
It's ridiculous, but Broncos are still going. Did we talk about, like, a couple of weeks ago, the no T-shirt ban? You have to wear T-shirts. You have to wear training gear. That was last week or the week before. But now there's concerns with Reece Walsh's fitness and his attitude heading into the new season. Basically because the no T-shirt ban, many felt were targeted at him and Ezra Mam.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Maguire cracking the whip there at the Broncos. But yeah, Channel 10 reported via social media that Reece Walsh, Selwyn Cobbo and Martin Tapau were bringing up the rear in a fitness test at Broncos training. So it's a bit of a concern that, the new coach is in sort of cracking the whip and he doesn't seem to have got through to Reece Walsh at this stage. I know it's early in the pre-season and everything and there's time to, to right the ship here, but that's not a good sign. That he's on a 4-year deal, a $5 million 4-year deal from 2026 onwards. So there's a huge investment being put in him, in Reece Walsh, by the Broncos, and they need him to buy in here. They can't afford for him to just be a show pony and get paid the huge money and go half-hearted at training here.
It was only like a year and a half ago that he was being looked at as like basically the future and the face of rugby league, and obviously all that's gone to his head, and his form's down, his attitude is poor. He better. If you remember a few years ago, back when Braithen Astor played for the Roosters, there was a Dragons player called Richie Williams. And in the Open, like it was his first year, I think, and it was the 2007 Titans came into the league. Dragons were playing the Titans and they beat him in the opening round, and Richie Williams had carved up the Titans and he outpaced Preston Campbell, and he was really disrespectful and gave Preston Campbell the finger while he was outpacing him. And he was the next big thing, actually. Like, he was fully the next big thing. And then it all went to his head, and then I remember it really clearly because he was interviewed before a Roosters game. when Braithen Astor was at the Roosters, and he said, Braithen Astor's not as good as people think he is. Trust me, he's not as good as he used to be. Something along those lines. Like, that was not the exact quote, but it was something along those lines. And the Roosters carved up the Dragons, and Braithen Astor had like the game of his life.
Yeah.
And then there was one point where Dragons had a scrum near their own line, and Richie Williams was feeding it, and Braithen Astor said to him, "Are you going to do anything other than pass the ball?" And Richie Williams sparked up. And it's a really good, funny footage because Braithen Astor's holding his mouth guard, and Richie Williams sparked up and goes towards him. It was back when you were allowed to punch.
Yeah.
So Braithen Astor straight away puts his mouth guard in and puts his fists up, and then they pull Richie Williams away. But he was for a few weeks there the next big thing. Really, he was the future young Indigenous kid, really fast, good step, great playmaker. All went to his head, and he didn't put it all in training. Had the wrong attitude and got sacked, and then was never heard from again. I don't even know what happened to him. And it doesn't matter if you're the superstar. He never made it to that second year $1 million contract type thing that Reece Walsh has. But Reece Walsh is in danger of fading into obscurity. It only takes, even for a superstar, or the next big thing like Reece Walsh, who was going to be the face of the league. He was the next James Tedesco, doesn't take, he has a bad run this year in the Broncos, and the Broncos look at sacking him and realising they've paid overs for him, and he's off to a club for much less behind another player,
But I guess this is the problem that the Broncos have got themselves into now by signing him on this 4-year, $5 million deal from 2026 onwards, is that, he knows that money's his now, and he can just go half-hearted at training, and he'll pocket that money. That's the problem, signing someone like that to this long-term multi-million-dollar deal is, where's the incentive to go hard at training? If you have, and he strikes me as a player who does have issues with motivating himself at training, if these reports are correct. And so for a player like that, you're playing a dangerous game, signing them on that huge money on a long-term deal, because they might go, I'm sorted for the next 4 years after. And that's the thing. That deal hasn't even kicked in yet. He's still got 1 year of his existing deal, and then he gets into his 4-year, $5 million cashing in deal. So
he's got to have a good year, otherwise they can finish it before that deal starts.
Yeah, I think the deal's been signed. I don't think they can get out of that. I think he's signed the dotted line, and that's it. They're locked in for 4 years.
Surely they wouldn't have to pay him at all. You never know with these rugby league deals. Who knows? I mean, Jerome Luai signed for 5 years, and it ended up being 2 years. Because don't new contracts only kick in on the 1st of November of the year before?
Yeah, but I think once it's been signed, I think it's a contract. It is
actually 1st of November of 2024 allows for contracts for 2026.
But I think that the deal. I think it's been done. So I don't think. I mean, unless obviously the contract's just there to protect both parties. But obviously, if Reece Walsh has another poor season this year, he's certainly not going to be looking elsewhere if he's getting paid $5 million for 4 years. So
the Broncos are paying him out. They got the money. They got the money. They'll be able to just let him go, and he can go play somewhere else, and they'll pay half his contract.
That'd still be a lot to pay for someone playing for someone else.
Broncos don't care. I don't think they've got so much money. Doesn't count towards their cap, yeah. So. Oh
no, I think it would. So that's.
Does it?
Yeah, well, if he signed a $5 million 4-year deal, if the Broncos went to another club and said, well, we don't want him here, can you pay half? And they say let's say, for example, a club does agree to pay half, right? That half would still count towards their cap. So so what's $5 million for 4 years? What's that? 1.25 million a year. 1.25 million. So that half of that is 625, I think, a year.
Yeah.
600. Is it 625?
Yeah,
620. Let's say it's 625. Half of it. So if they were to pay half, then that'd be a 625 grand hit on their cap. So that's the thing. That deal's been signed now. I think. they're in a world of trouble here, the Broncos. And look, we're going to talk about Daly Cherry Evans and Tom Trbojevic in a second. But the difference with them is that while Tom Trbojevic gets injured a lot, and while you might think Cherry Evans is overpaid, you can't ever question the commitment of those two. They do everything they're on big money, but they do everything they can for their club. They really do. They put in 100% effort all the time, those two. You can't say that about Reece Walsh. I don't think you can say that about Reece Walsh. And he's at risk of becoming just an overpaid show pony.
He's rapidly becoming the new Latrell Mitchell. Because I noticed today we don't have any Latrell Mitchell. Oh, no, we do.
Oh, no, yeah, we do. It's rare. A day where we don't talk about Latrell is very rare on this podcast.
But with DC and Tom Trbojevic, this is the weirdest story in the history of the world. So Daly Cherry Evans has said he's going to play on in 2026. And then he said he's not.
He said, there's doubt. I think there's doubt over it.
And then he said he's not, and then he said, maybe I will. And then he said, maybe I won't. And so Manly are now tossing up whether they move Tom Trbojevic into the halves. Which I think is a terrible idea, to be honest.
Well, I mean, if you're going to move, and Tom Trbojevic is obviously a superstar fullback. He might be a little bit slower than he once was, but he's still a superstar fullback. If you're going to move a player of his star quality, if they're going to change positions, you have to have a gun. First of all, to start off, if you're even going to think about doing it, you have to have a gun fullback lined up to replace him at fullback. They have Lehigh Hopewadi. I guess the main example we think about when we talk about a fullback moving into the halves is Darren Lockyer.
Yeah.
So he moved from fullback to 5'8" in 2004, but that coincided with Carmichael Hunt making his debut. Now, I haven't seen a lot of Lehigh Hopewadi, but I don't think Lehigh Hopewadi is Carmichael Hunt, certainly not at this stage. So the Broncos took a punt and did it because they didn't have a 5'8" at the time, and they went, well, we've got this gun young fullback in Carmichael Hunt, so we're going to take a punt and move Darren Lockyer to 5'8", and the rest was history. He played the second half of his career at 5'8" Lockyer, and he did an outstanding job at 5'8".
Best 5'8" in the...
Yeah, and won a premiership at 5'8" as well in 2006. So...
And captains his country at 5'8" a million times.
Yeah, so that's one example of it working. But as I say, you've got to have the fullback there in order to do that. And I wouldn't put Lehigh Hopewadi in the same category as Carmichael Hunt.
It kind of continues on with the theme of the year that there's not enough halves available, and so now they're trying to manufacture halves. I don't think Tom Trbojevic is a 5'8". He's not a dominant playmaker. He's not a talker. I don't even know if he can kick. Can he kick?
I've not seen a lot of evidence of that. And the danger as well is, I mean, the idea would be to move him to 5'8" and Luke Brooks would go to halfback. But Luke Brooks can't guide teams to the finals at halfback. All that time he played for the West Tigers, and he didn't play in the finals at halfback. So the only...
It is the Tigers.
It is, but you know what I mean? I don't think... People went on about how... it was great that Luke Brooks played finals this year, but he did that with Daly Cherry Evans alongside him at halfback and with Tom Trbojevic at fullback. I don't know that without Daly Cherry Evans there steering the ship, that Luke Brooks could guide Manly, into the finals in the halfback position. I would have thought it would be much easier, and I know it's hard to recruit halfbacks, but I would have thought it would be a lot easier to try and find a halfback somewhere. All right, they might not be Daly Cherry Evans, but if you can just get someone half decent to play halfback, I would have thought they'd be better off doing that and leaving Tom Trbojevic at fullback and Brooks at 5'8", rather than putting Lehigh Hopewadi at fullback, who, I mean, it's unknown how good he's going to go as his career moves on. You'd then be moving Tom Trbojevic to 5'8", who, as you said, an unproven 5'8". We don't know how he would go at 5'8". He doesn't have that general kicking game, as you just said before. And then by doing that, as I say, you'd be moving Luke Brooks to halfback. And Luke Brooks struggles when he's steering the ship, when he's when he's in charge. If you're number 7, you're the boss of the side. And Luke Brooks' record at number 7 isn't crash hot.
Yeah, that's the downside of anyone who's played for the Tigers for the past 15 years. Your record at whatever it is never going to be good, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard.
But what else do you go on?
You can't. And that's what I mean. That's the problem, because there's nothing else you can go on. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're at the Tigers for the past 20 years, your record's going to be terrible. And
that's what it is, right? You're judged on your record, right?
Maybe Luke Brooks is the greatest halfback that's ever born. Could Andrew Johns have taken the Tigers to the finals?
Oh, well, if anyone was going to do it, it'd be him. But
single-handedly.
No one else, No, I mean, as I say, I don't know, but if anyone was going to do it, it'd be him.
You know what? We'll find out next year on whether Jerome Luai can, because if Jerome Luai can, then Andrew Johns could.
Yeah. I guess the issue is, that's right. The only thing is, I guess, way you'd go, it sort of makes mild sense, is that he is slowing down. He is Trbojevic. I went to that finals game they played against the Bulldogs this year, and he looked a yard slower. He did. It was noticeable. And someone who's slowing down at fullback, he's getting older, he's injury prone. But then again, I think, but to be honest, I think the issue for Manly really is, it's how much cash they've got tied up in Tom Trbojevic and Cherry Evans. That's the problem. They're paying those guys too much for the output they're getting from those guys. And the problem is that because they're paying them too much, then they're deficient in other areas of their salary cap because of that.
Well, one of the things, actually, that's just occurred to me, think about it like this, right? Daly Erich Evans goes and Tom Trbojevic moves to 5'8". You're losing one of the best halfbacks in the world and one of the best fullbacks in the world in one go. And you're going to halfback that has never done anything and an unproven 5'8" with a completely new fullback.
Yeah. So you're right.
You're going to go better?
You're right. So you go from having a gun halfback and a gun fullback to having Hopewadi, an unproven fullback, an unproven 5'8", and certainly an unproven halfback. An unproven halfback who's getting on in age. That's the thing. It's one thing to be unproven when you're 21. You got time. It's another thing to be unproven when I think Luke Brooks is probably in his 30s now.
Yeah, they all are, right?
I think he'd be in his 30s now. So if he's unproven in his 30s...
29, he'll be 30 in 4 days.
All right, there you go. Nearly. I was nearly right. Yeah, nearly 30.
Happy birthday, Luke.
Well, he'll be 30 when he next plays.
Yeah.
So... happy birthday, Luke Brooks. Sorry, we've spent the last 5 minutes giving it to him. It's nearly his birthday. But this is the thing. It's not. With Cherry Evans and Tom Trbojevic, the issue is what they're being paid. Like if you go to Cherry Evans and say, like Cherry Evans is on 1.2 million. If you went to him and said, I know he's only got a year to go, but if you went to him and said, would you stay on for one more year in 2026 for $700,000? You'd go, yeah, all right. We'll take $500,000 pay cut for what would probably be his last year. Well, it certainly would be. I mean, he doesn't even know if he's going to play that long. You'd take him, right? You'd go, we'll take him for $700,000. And Tom Trbojevic, same thing. If he gets to the end of his next contract and you say, well, instead of being on 1.15, would you take $700,000? And he'd go, yeah, all right, sure. I feel a bit bad that he's the sort of player who would go, I feel a bit bad that I've been on huge money while I haven't been playing a lot and I've been injured a lot. So yeah, I'll take $700,000. Then you go, well, great. Now we don't have that problem now. We're not paying too. The issue is that they're paying too much for those two guys, and they're not getting the output. As I say, those Tom Trbojevic hasn't won a premiership at Manly. Cherry Evans has, but it was in his first season when he would have been on very small money. So since Cherry Evans has been on huge money, and since Tom Trbojevic has debuted with the club, they have not won a premiership. So you'd have to say that their salary cap model paying very few players a lot of money. 4.56 million of Manly's cap is on Cherry Evans, Tom Trbojevic, Jake Trbojevic, Luke Brooks, and Ola Kawatu. 4.56 million. That's with a top 30 salary cap of 11.25 million. You've got that much cash, 4.56 million, tied up on 5 players. You'd have to say that salary cap model hasn't worked, because since they've used that salary cap model, they don't have a premiership to show for it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's Manly. Like, that's their thing.
Yeah, but I guess overall you'd have to say, well, this salary cap model isn't working.
Yeah,
so they need to do something different.
If Anthony Seibold was a good coach, he would have spent last year fixing it.
Yeah, too worried about his own contract, right? Too worried about... Like, he couldn't afford as a coach to miss the 8 this year. So he's not going to make wholesale changes and risk missing the 8. Yeah. He's going to hang on to what he's got and hope they scrape into the 8.
I hope they don't get injured. Well, I hope Tom Trbojevic doesn't get injured.
No. You want him to be injury-free. One of the star players of the game, won that Dally M medal in 2021. And that's the thing. He guided Manly to the top 4 that year. When he's injury-free, it's great. Everything's great. But he's just not injury-free enough for Manly's liking.
Still on Manly. Well, now they've ruled out Brandon Smith.
The list, we should have a whiteboard up here. Clubs that don't want Brandon Smith.
Did anyone ask? Like, this is the thing, right? Did anyone ask, like from Brandon Smith's camp or the Roosters camp, the fact that now Manly is, the 5th, 6th club?
Yeah, I've got the list here.
That are like, we don't want him. And, no one's asking. The only club that was going to take him was North Queensland, and he ruled himself out.
Yeah. Well, I think what's happened is Manly CEO Tony Mestrov said, speaking to Yahoo Sports Australia, said Manly won't be pursuing Brandon Smith. So I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that someone at Yahoo Sports has given him a call and asked him. But sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes clubs want to get on the front foot and the CEO gets on the phone to the journalist. I'm guessing, though, in this case, that someone at Yahoo Sport has rang Mestrov and asked him about it, and then he's responded to it, which is fair enough.
I don't even know that Yahoo had a sport division or a reporters division. So you talk about this list of clubs. So the Raiders, as you said, that they were the ones where no one asked, but they trying to keep in the news.
Yeah, they said it anyway. They ruled themselves out of wanting him. Remember, he called Ryan Pappenhausen small and fragile on the podcast. That upset people at his former club of the Storm, and obviously now they don't want him back. Why would they? I mean, they've got Harry Grant there anyway. They wouldn't want him back.
Well, they chose Harry Grant over him.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense for him to go back there now. So they're obviously not going to take him on. He bagged the Tigers for coming back unfit to pre-season training, so they're not going to want him again. They've got Coruscant, so why would they want him? And as he said it was too hot to play in Townsville, so the Cowboys are now going, all right, well, he doesn't want to come here. So with every week we do the podcast, there's a new club saying that they don't want Brandon Smith. It's become a thing. Maybe we should get a whiteboard put up here and just write down each club that doesn't want him.
Cross them off as they go.
By the time we get to February or whatever, we'll probably have gone through all the clubs and he'll be on his way to England, I would have thought.
The only ones that'll definitely take him because they need anybody is the Titans, I reckon, still. Said it last week.
You still think he'll go to the Titans?
I don't think he'll go to the Titans. I just think they're the only ones that, no matter what he says or does, they'll take him. Because right now the Titans will take anyone.
That's right.
He was on another podcast this week. He's just constantly on the podcast, constantly talking shit. So it could he talked about what was the thing, how disappointed he is that he may have to leave the Roosters, but he's been there for a while on big money. He hasn't achieved anything. He's come from Melbourne. That was the whole thing, right? Melbourne had Harry Grant and Brandon Smith. Picked Harry Grant. You have to wonder why. Well, now we know why.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty straightforward choice, that one.
The Roosters fans, I know, are kind of turning on him. They were so happy to see him when he was coming, and they loved him for the first year or so, and now they're starting to turn on him. Obviously, the Roosters club don't want him. They've already signed Reece Robson for next year. He's already been given permission to go and told he won't get a contract from not next year, the year after, sorry. Reece Walsh is coming 2026. This rugby league contract thing is stupid. But, yeah, where's he going to go? God, please don't come to the Dragons. Honestly.
Yeah, he won't go to the Dogs either. Reed Marnie, they'll keep Reed Marnie over him. I mean, I don't think he would fit into the culture at the Bulldogs anyway, the culture that Phil Gould and Cameron Ciraldo are trying to build there.
One where people actually have respect.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't have thought podcasts are a good place for somebody who's ticking off giving all these clubs reasons not to want him. I don't think podcasts are the best place to be for a player like that. He's just going to keep... word of advice for Brandon Smith, if you're digging yourself a hole, stop digging.
Yeah. If it's looking like you're not going to be able to get out, the hole's too deep, bro. Like, just stop digging.
Stop digging now. It's time to stop going on podcasts. Stop giving teams a reason not to want you. Keep your mouth shut for a start. Work on getting back. Hopefully you can come back, and I know he's injured for most of the year next year. Hopefully he can come back, play some sort of role for the Roosters, perform to his potential, and hopefully push for a deal somewhere. But look, going on podcasts at this stage, that's not going to solve anything. Save that for the end of your career when you're trying to get into the media. Obviously he's positioning himself to get into the media post-playing. That's the clear signal we're getting from these constant podcast appearances and these strong opinions. But, save that for the end of your career. He needs to wise up here and find himself another club and stop digging this hole that he's in.
Yeah, exactly. Even if he's trying to get a job in the media, going into the media and pissing off all of the clubs, you got to know in rugby league, you have to be friends with people to get into the media. It has nothing to do with your ability or your opinions. It's who you're mates with.
And if you're going to do it, wait till you retire. Do it after you finish playing, where you're not trying to find other clubs. I'm just look up how old he is now.
28. I just looked it up. 28.
Yeah, so he's probably got... If he wises up and performs and gets his head in the game, he's probably got another 5 or 6 years left in him.
Yeah.
So he needs to wise up and stop going on these podcasts and alienating everyone.
Yeah, like I said, you got to be friends with people to get into the media in rugby league. In all sport, but especially in rugby league. There's a reason there's so many terrible media... ex-player media personalities. It's not because they were picked because they were good. It's because they were mates with the guys who were already in there.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious that a lot of the time, I'm not going to name any names, but they've been like, this guy's available. Let's bring him in. It's not because this guy's articulate, well-spoken, and has had media training and interviews well.
So I'll name names. There's a reason why Kevin Walters is replacing Corey Parker at Fox League.
Yeah, that was the one I was really excited. Does anyone really think Aaron Woods is a good commentator? Or is he just loved by everybody because he's a goofball?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, if it was on commentary ability, you'd have Corey Parker over Kevin Walters every day of the week. So obviously it's not about commentary ability. It's about Kevin Walters being mates with the right people at Fox League. And obviously Corey Parker wasn't as close to those people in influential positions there who've decided to cast him aside and replace him with Kevin Walters next season.
So Brandon Smith keeps bagging everyone. He's not going to have any friends because what it'll come down to is... there's going to be no friend who will go, Jesus is available to be on 2GB radio call.
Yeah.
He's going to have no friends. So that's the other thing.
Would you get him on here?
I'd get anyone on here, man. I'm like the Joe Rogan style. I'll talk to anyone. Anyone. I just want to talk to people as people. That's the thing. And the other thing is, come on the podcast, Brandon Smith. But I'm not afraid to ask them, about these things. I would ask him. One of the first things I ask him, what do you think that, how are you feeling, and what do you think you're doing by having these opinions and putting all these clubs offside? What is your goal? Do you even think you're an idiot.
Yeah, okay. So, Brandon Smith, you shouldn't go on any podcasts except this one.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Come on this one, bro. I also, in Jiu-Jitsu, there's a guy that everyone loves, Craig Jones. He's an Australian guy. And I think he's an internet bully, and he's not funny. Everyone thinks he's so funny, and they all love him, and they all follow him around. And I appreciate that he put on a great event, the Craig Jones Invitational, at the same time as ADCC. But yeah, I'd just have him on there and have a conversation with him. Like, why are you such a douchebag? Why do you bully everyone?
Yeah.
Entertaining. I know guys that he has bullied on the internet that have never said anything about him, but when they lose a match or whatever, he posts about them and makes fun of them. It's like, bro, you've never won anything. Right, he won Polaris, but it's so yeah. I'd ask him that. Anyone, doesn't matter, because I don't dislike anyone actually. Except for Aaron Wood's commentary, but I don't dislike Aaron Woods.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not. Sure, these people are all nice people. It's not a slight on them personally. We're just talking about their ability as commentators in the media.
Seriously, Latrell Mitchell. Moving on to the Eels and Rabbitohs and this absolute nonsense with the suspension. The Eels and Rabbitohs are deciding to pick what game Josh Addo-Carr and Latrell Mitchell will serve their suspensions for, and it's going to be the All-Star game. So they've lodged the application to the NRL, and word everywhere is the NRL is going to approve it. So Josh Addo-Carr and Latrell Mitchell are going to be able to serve their suspensions in the All-Stars game. So the All-Stars are unaffected, actually, anyway. Absolutely unaffected.
It's an exhibition game.
They're going to name 2 other people anyway. All-Stars are unaffected. They'll have the same people in the squad.
It's an exhibition game where no one cares about the result.
It's an exhibition game that has nothing to do with the NRL season.
No, there's a very, very easy solution to this. You say to Latrell Mitchell and Josh Addo-Carr, if you want to play in the All-Stars game, go ahead, fine, play. But you're serving your ban in the NRL season. That's it.
They're suspended from the NRL. I also don't think, who was it? Nelson Asafa-Solomona was suspended in the NRL. So he wasn't able to play for New Zealand. Was it him? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you mentioned that. Nelson Asafa-Solomona served 3 of his 5-game suspension for New Zealand in the Pacific Championship.
He should have been allowed to play for New Zealand, because what's the NRL got to do with the...
Yep. There's more examples as well. Api Coruscant, the West Tigers captain, was able to serve 2 of his 3-game ban, 2 of the 3 games for Fiji during the international schedule. Cameron Murray, if you can believe this, was able to serve his suspension in the Prime Minister's 13 game, which allowed him to be available for selection immediately for Australian coach Mal Meninga. This is a farce. There's an easy solution. You say, if you want to play international football, go ahead. You want to play the All-Stars game, go ahead. But either way, you're serving your ban during the NRL season.
You're banned from the NRL.
You're banned from the NRL. You're serving the games during the NRL season. If it's something
like the Pacific Championships, and Nelson Asafa-Solomona does the exact same thing in the Pacific Championships and gets, what do you get, a 5-game suspension? Yeah, 5-game suspension.
Yes, and he served 3 of the 5.
He should be banned from playing New Zealand for 5 games. And if that goes all the way through to next year, that goes all the way through to next year. How many games? They played 3 games this year, right?
New Zealand in the Pacific Championship? Yeah, I think it was 2 round-robin games, and they played that last game.
So they played 4. So if Nelson Asafa-Solomona gets a 5-game suspension 1 week before grand final, his suspension for the NRL is the grand final and the first 4 rounds of the NRL. Because that's the NRL. In the non-NRL competitions, he can play. Because he's not suspended from international football. And then,
so I guess we'd apply the same to the state of origin.
Yeah, 100%.
If you commit an offence in a state of origin game, like Joseph Suaalii did this year, hitting Reece Walsh, your ban is for state of origin games only.
Yeah, are they in the NRL?
Yeah.
Because if you get banned from people can argue this all you want, but there are actually precedents around it, okay? Because if you get banned in the NRL, like if Jared Warrior-Hargreaves had a 12-week suspension from the NRL, okay, in his last game, and now he's going over to ULKR. Is that where he's going? I just like to say UL.
Is that how it's pronounced, UL?
It is.
Okay, right. I learned
Kingston
something.
Rovers. And
UL, okay, you learn something new every day.
So he goes over and plays for ULKR. He serves 0 weeks of his suspension. He starts straight away, okay? Then if he decides after his 1 season of ULKR he actually does want to come back to the NRL, he has to serve his 12 weeks. because it is a different competition.
To play devil's advocate, what I would say to that is, though, and I think Joseph Suaalii, I'm pretty sure, it happened in game one.
Yeah,
He's hit on Reece Walsh. So let's say, hypothetically, let's talk about someone in Joseph Suaalii's position this year, right? So Joseph Suaalii knew that this season was going to be his last season in the NRL and that he was going to rugby union, right? So let's say, and I know it happened in game one, but let's say his hit on Reece Walsh happened in game three, right? So then you go, well, so he hits Reece Walsh, he cops whatever game suspension. I think it was 4 games.
Yeah.
So 4-game suspension. I guess the counter argument to that is, well, it wouldn't hurt him at all then, because if it happened in game 3, well, he doesn't serve the ban in the NRL season, and he knows it's his last season before he goes to rugby union. So that's the counter argument to that is, well, he then suffers no real punishment other than the fact that he was actually sent off in the game, even though it was game 1, not game 3. But then again, I guess you'd say to that is, well, there is no perfect system here.
Yeah, well...
And this system would be better than the one they got now, where they're cherry-picking which games they're serving.
That's the main thing that I think, right? Because Joseph Suaalii is young. If he ever came back and became good and was still good and then wanted to play State of Origin, he wouldn't be allowed to. He'd be still be suspended. And they have these things now. They just invented them, like recently, called computers. You can store things on a thing, like a new thing called the cloud. Where stuff lasts forever unless we have a apocalyptic event that shuts down all computers, and I don't think we're going to be watching rugby league then anyway. Because you see, like, a good example would be like Sonny Bill, right? Just say he was suspended for 4 weeks for a hit before he ran off to France. He came back.
Yeah.
He came back twice, right?
Yeah, well, he came back he left in 2008. Left the Bulldogs in 2008 in a disgraceful manner, as you've said. Came back in 2013 with the Roosters, won that premiership. And then he came back again in 2020. So he came back twice after we thought, well, he's never coming back.
So if he was suspended in that 2008 and then he came back in 2013, serves his suspension.
Yeah.
Or he's suspended in 2013, he comes back again, when did you say it was? 2020?
Yeah.
Serves his suspension. Because the things like Joseph Suaalii or any player, right, knowing that they may not be back or knowing that this is their last game so they can basically do whatever they want, that doesn't actually happen. Because otherwise, every player who is retiring this year would just go out and coat hanger everyone.
Yeah.
They don't have that intention in them in the end, in reality. I mean, but yeah, there is no perfect system. But having this kind of system is better than the one you have where teams are just picking when their players are going to serve their suspension.
Yeah, and look, we should point out as well, you make a good point there, because Sonny Bill was in his early 20s when he made that exit to France out of nowhere, blindsided everybody at the club. Joseph Suaalii is in his early 20s now. So you're right. So you just go. Yeah, okay. He's committed the offence in State of Origin. So let's say it's a 4-game ban. That means you got a 4-game ban from State of Origin. So if you ever were to come back, well, you're ineligible to play for New South Wales for the first 4 games they play after you come back to the NRL.
Think about, and like if you had something like that, think about if it was like a 4-game suspension, how much more careful players would be as well. Because there is a massive risk of missing 2 years of games. And if you miss 2 years of State of Origin, you ain't coming back. That's a super rare kind of thing. So people would be a lot more careful as well. But that's just specifically the State of Origin.
Okay, so we sort of agree that that's the system. That should be the system. Yeah. In whatever game it is that you commit the offence, you serve the suspensions in those fixtures, whether it be State of Origins, internationals. If you commit the offence in a State of Origin game or in internationals, that's where you serve the ban.
The only exemption
in the NRL.
The only exemption I have to the rule, because you've always got to have exemptions, is trials. Okay, so I would,
because they're not an official.
Yeah, I would. There's 2 bits to it, right? The first is I wouldn't allow them to serve suspensions in trials because they have no effect on the NRL.
Yeah.
But I would suspend players for the NRL if they committed infractions in trials.
Yeah. And I'd add another one to that is I'd add the All-Stars game to that as well. Because it's an exhibition game. I think if they get if they commit an offence in the All-Stars game, I think they should serve the suspension in the NRL.
Well, that's all NRL players. That's why.
So they can't then go, I've got a 3-game ban, so I missed the next 3 All-Stars games.
And it is because because basically that All-Stars is a trial game anyway, but it's all NRL players. You know, and the trials is all NRL players. One of the reasons for suspension is because of the injury, the danger of injury. I did something bad that badly affected a team. I badly affected the other team for 3 weeks, 4 weeks because I injured the player. I put Reece Walsh out for 4 weeks. So therefore, my team is also adversely affected for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever, right? So that's why the trials and the All-Star games, because they're all NRL players, I'm adversely affecting another team, so therefore my team should be adversely affected in the NRL. Yeah,
and that Cameron Murray being able to serve his suspension in the Prime Minister's 13 game, that's a load of nonsense as well, so that's another exemption. So Prime Minister's 13 games, All-Stars games, trial games don't count, but apart from that, proper test matches, internationals, State of Origin games, NRL games, I think this is the system they should be using.
Because like I always say, the fact that they're allowed to serve their suspensions in the All-Stars and State of Origins and internationals based on they would have been picked if they were available is absolute garbage. If that's the case, if they're going to have that system, then you have to make them go in the squad. And then the team, the whatever team you're talking about, State of Origin is 20-man squad or whatever. They pick 20-man squad. I can't remember. Down to 18.
Yeah, sometimes they pick an extended squad and then cut a couple of players, and you have a 19th.
There is a limit to the squad number. They're not allowed to pick 60 players, right?
Yep.
There is a limit. It might be 25, whatever it is. If I pick Latrell Mitchell in the current system, I'm saying I don't agree with the current system, but if I pick Latrell Mitchell for State of Origin, even though he's suspended, then I can't pick another guy. Because the State of Origin team is not adversely affected. It's the same with all those internationals, right? If I'm picking the Prime Minister's 13 is that's bush crap. But if I'm picking Cam Murray or Nelson Asafa-Solomona for New Zealand, the Pacific Champion had 25-man squads, and I can only pick my team from that 25. I've picked Nelson, now I only have 24 players. And I can only pick my squad from those 24.
Yeah, and even if it was something like, just throwing it out there, even if it was something like, say, someone like a Kalen Ponga wanting to serve a suspension in Australian Kangaroos games, you go, well, hang on a sec. They don't really need Kalen Ponga because they got Dylan Edwards there, or they could pick Reece Walsh, or they could pick James Tedesco. Yeah. So, come on.
But that's
Australia, so Australia's not suffering anything from Kalen Ponga not being available.
Exactly.
They've got 3, 4, 5 other players.
If they were going to pick a 25-man squad and go, we're going to take 2 fullbacks, right? And we're going to take Dylan Edwards and Kalen Ponga. Kalen Ponga is suspended. We've still got to take Kalen Ponga. Then it's okay for the suspension to stand. But the fact is, they go, Kalen Ponga is suspended. We would have picked him, but he's suspended. So now he's going to serve his suspension, but we're not going to pick him and pick Reece Walsh instead.
And they probably wouldn't have picked him anyway because he he said, oh yeah, I don't want to play, and then he said, oh yeah, I do, and then they were like, no, come on, mate, you're gone.
The whole idea of suspensions is your team has to be adversely affected because you've adversely affected another team.
This is the thing, there is no perfect system with this. So you can only go with the best system. Yeah, and I don't think they have the best system at the moment. I think the system that we've talked about right here is better than the one they've got now. That's
actually really sums it up very well. There's no perfect system, but you've got to go with the best system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the legal system isn't perfect, right? But it's the best system. Apart from when they're apart from the Ezra Mam situation.
So that's that. Yes. But let's talk about the Tigers, because the Tigers are Latrell Mitchell too. We have a story about them every week. Yeah. Tigers are going to get closed down, apparently.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, if you can believe it. The Tigers figures reportedly fear the prospect of being wiped from NRL history, claiming a plot for the Western Suburbs Magpies to take full control of the embattled joint venture. So there is a plot to abandon the West Tigers brand and just be the West Magpies.
Yeah, so apparently...
I'll tell you what, this merger has not worked on any level.
There's a text chain that's going around. I swear to God, I started this text chain. Because
that's your secret. Start the story and then we can talk about it on the podcast.
Because this is a conversation that I had earlier this year, And we've talked about it on the podcast. What is the solution to the Tigers' woes? We made fun of Luke Brooks earlier. Right? They've changed their whole team. They've changed their coach 43 times. They've had two of the top coaches in the league. Arguably the best current coach, Ivan Cleary, was there. Also, Michael Maguire, who no matter what Gordon Tallis says, is one of the top coaches in the league. He's not Craig Bellamy or Ivan Cleary, but he's Michael Maguire. He broke South Premiership drought.
Yeah,
he won with New Zealand. He won with New South Wales. He won
with Wigan in the Super League.
So, they had quality coach. They have had quality players. They've got Api Coruscant, multi-time premiership winner, who won a premiership at Souths. Thanks, Vic, for pointing that out. Yeah. As well as Penrith.
Yeah, 2 premierships at Penrith, yep.
They've got, they've had countless amazing players over the years. Their board has been sacked, changed multiple times. Their CEOs, their chairmans, their legal team.
They give credit to players who go to other clubs and play in the finals when those players didn't ever play in the finals at their own club.
There's only 2 things that haven't changed since they've gone on this downward path. Some would say since 2005.
Yeah.
The fans, and you can't change your fans, and their fans support them no matter what. The fact they still have fans boggles my mind.
They've only made the finals twice since they won the premiership in 2005. 3 wooden spoons in a row. One thing that worries me, though, if they were to be wiped, and if it was just the Western Suburbs Magpies, is, we talk about how passionate their supporters are, and I would hate it for those supporters. This is the thing, the Balmain area, it's changed over the years. Now it's a very affluent area. It didn't used to be.
Gentrified.
Yes, it didn't used to be. It used to be a real working class area, and those old school Balmain types, they love the Tigers. They love them. They're so passionate about them. And I would hate to see if you did get rid of the Tigers, you would lose a lot of supporters not just in Balmain. They've got a lot of supporters in the inner west, stretching through Ashfield, that sort of area. You would lose a lot of those supporters as well.
I would make a bold claim that when all these clubs merged, like Dragons and stuff was on, one had to bring something and the other had to bring something. West is the money and the juniors apparently. The majority of juniors from the West Tigers. Balmain has the fans. I don't know anecdotally, personally, a single West Magpies fan. I know heaps of Balmain Tigers fans. And not old. Like, I know young Balmain Tigers fans,
And that's the thing, you live near sort of Combank Stadium, don't you?
Yep.
So you're out in that, heading out in that Western Suburbs territory. And even living out there, you don't know any Wests fans.
When I lived in I actually went to Ashfield Boys, which is right next door to West Leeds Club. When I was in Ashfield Boys in 1992, 1993, I didn't even know very many West Magpies fans then, but there was heaps of Balmain fans.
Yeah,
that was when they were Balmain, right?
Yeah.
So if you were, this is the thing, this is the conversation that we had, right? I was saying, I think the best solution for the Tigers is actually to demerge. Because the problem with the Tigers, I don't care what anyone says, I am correct in this. Problem with the Tigers is not the coach, not the players, not the board chairman, all that kind of stuff. Definitely not the fans, not their 44 stadiums they play out, not their 320 jerseys they release each year. The problem is West's Magpies leak stories about the Tigers. And the Tigers leak stories about the West Magpies.
And this is another example.
And it adversely affects the players. No matter what they say, we don't let this stuff off the field affect us, then why does your team suck? The conversation I had with people was, in this text chain I had earlier this year, was the solution is actually for them to split. And my suggestion was for the Tigers to take over. And the people that I know that are Tigers fans in that text conversation were like, problem with that is Tigers have no money. They contribute zero. They contribute nothing. That's what they were saying. They contribute nothing. But my argument to that is they actually contribute the fans. I know there are West Magpies fans. I actually used to... One of my teachers when I was a kid was a West Magpies player. But everyone made fun of him because everyone hated the Magpies, even though we were at Ashfield. So, yeah, like...
They're one of the most passionate supporter bases in the game. Those old school Balmain fans who still go to the Leichhardt games.
Yeah, the worst stadium in the world.
And they still, it is. It's a bad stadium, isn't it? But they still show up. Yeah. So that shows how passionate they are.
They all walk down, you go to Leichhardt on a game day, they're walking down the street because they close off all the roads, no parking.
And I don't know what pubs are near the ground, but whatever pub is near the ground, they would all go there.
Yeah, they all go there. It's packed every single time. And this story that's come out with the text messages with the Tigers are the ones that might be, there's the plot to get rid of the Tigers, even though it's been denied and so on, but there's text messages. This is a dumb plot. The plot should be to get rid of the Magpies. Sorry, Magpies fans. That's just the way it is. Tigers should take over the Magpies and change West Magpies Club to the Tigers Club. Get rid of all the Magpies thing, and then you'll lose that whole bitter leaking of stories. Get rid of the leaking of stories, and I think that will fix the club.
It was just never a merger that you would have thought was ever going to work because they were fierce. And look, to be honest, I don't think mergers ever really work. I don't like the idea of mergers.
No, I hate them personally.
But this one in particular was one that was never going to work. They were always bitter rivals, West and Balmain. The idea of them merging and it being some happy marriage, that was just a fantasy. That was never going to happen.
That was crazy. So just get rid of the Magpies. Whenever you politicise something and it becomes for profit, it becomes bad. And Melbourne Storm have acknowledged that by first saying that they're going to be dumping the Welcome to Country ceremonies. Mm-hmm. In a press statement saying they were going to scale it back and now denying that they're going to be dumping the Welcome to Country ceremonies.
Yeah.
You can't say something publicly. Again, they have this thing now called the internet. It's new. They've just discovered it. Sent to us by aliens, where everything you put out on the internet stays forever. Have you ever heard of Wayback Machine, Melbourne Storm? Because even if you delete it, Wayback Machine has already stored. So you can go and look at old web pages and stuff. If a store ever changes their policy on you to deny you a refund and you know they've changed it, just go on Wayback Machine. You can see yesterday's internet, So...
Yeah, they announced that their club would review regular Welcome to Country ceremonies. They announced it themselves. And then obviously it was a case of they put their toe in the water and they realised it was too cold and they pulled their toe out of the water again. And they've released another statement saying, oh no, we're not ditching these ceremonies. Clearly this is a case of they put it out there, they've realised that the PC Brigade are just not going to let them do this. And then they've backtracked on it and gone, oh look, no, we're not doing this. We're going to keep doing these Welcome to Country ceremonies as if people need to be welcomed to their own country. But anyway,
some Aboriginal nations have voted. I don't know what they're called. Sorry for anything ignorant I say right now. Nations, tribes, whatever, have voted to get rid of them as well. They won't support them anymore, and it's mainly because they've become a for-profit function. Mm. Right, and so secondly, they have become a politicised notion thanks to Lydia Thorpe, the strange duck, and Pauline Hanson, the two most racist people in politics right now, Australian politics right now. There was something a few years ago they agreed on, and I was like, I think the world's about to shatter. But because of the profiteering and politicising about it, it's become something that actually shouldn't be done. Mm. I saw Welcome to Countries when I was working in education 20 years ago, where I would go to government talks and stuff, and they would just acknowledge the people, right, and that'd be it. At an ARIA Awards I went to in 2006 or something like that, they went through the whole ARIA Awards, and then John Butler Trio came on the stage and performed, and before they performed, John Butler said, because nobody else has done it, I'm going to acknowledge and it was that line, I'd like to acknowledge the blah, 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 whatever area you're on. And it was set. But now, look at this year, with old mate talking about, we don't do it to appease the white fella and stuff. before the referendum, there was like these long-winded speeches about how you should vote yes in the welcome to country. And people are getting paid to do it, right? They charge to do it. If you watch that movie by Matt Walsh, I Am Racist, he talks about, no, Am I Racist, sorry. That's all about like the race hustlers in America that have taken the negative sentiments and the issues with like George Floyd and stuff like that and started profiteering off it. They're talking about, you know, like they run conventions and talks and stuff, and they'll come to your house and do like, you know, racism dinners and things. They'll charge you $30,000, and that's his. Like, Matt Walsh isn't actually like the best person in the world. He's ultra conservative. Like, I don't agree with most of his politics, but that's the thing with the Welcome to Country as well. It's on the path. If you watch Am I Racist, the Welcome to Country is on the path of that. It's a comedy movie, Am I Racist, actually. Like, it's a pretty funny guy, even though I don't agree with politics. But the Welcome to Country is on this path of people profiteering off it. And that's the problem. Anything that has good intentions, right, is good. But once it becomes a for-profit thing, it will become bad. Because profit is not good intentions.
Yeah.
So I would support the Melbourne Storm getting rid of it. If it's because of that. If it's because we want to get rid of it because it's being over-politicised by the strange duck Lydia Thorpe. Can't say her name without calling her a strange duck, because that's what she is. Overly politicised by Pauline Hanson. Whether you agree with either of their politics, they're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. One is an ultra left-wing nutbag and one is an ultra right-wing nutbag, right? Over-politicised by them, and people have started profiteering off it. So I fully support Melbourne Storm's decision to get rid of them, and the people who whine about it need to understand the motivation.
Yeah, and, you know, you don't... it's not the NRL's job to have these ceremonies. It's a football code. You don't need to be welcomed to your own country. It's not like an international event. Maybe, if as I say, maybe at the Olympic Games you would do it. The Brisbane opening ceremony in 2032, have a welcome to country. Yeah, it makes sense to have it somewhere like that. Or at the Sydney 2000 Olympics, you would do it there. That would make sense. Having it at NRL and AFL games every second week, NRL and AFL fans don't need to be welcomed to their own country. It's out of place.
You can have it in the Indigenous round, you know, that kind of thing. But it's like... I applaud the Melbourne Storm if the motivation is... We've looked at it. It's become a political... it's been overly politicised, and it's basically for profit. And as an NRL club, we actually shouldn't be involved in anything political, so we're not going to do it. Okay? Yeah. We are bipartisan, centrist, in the middle. We support neither side. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, that's
not
how
hard.
If it's like that, I applaud it.
Yeah, it's not hard.
You know? There is a thing right now, it's like funny, you know, because Australia tries to copy America. That's the thing. Like in America, all this stuff, this race hustling stuff has come very much into the light. And so you can see like Donald Trump won in a landslide. And a lot of it has to do, the theory is, to do with that kind of stuff, right? Black Lives Matter was a massive... The Black Lives Matter protests were a terrible thing. The Black Lives Matter message was good. The Black Lives Matter charity was a property scam. You know, it actually got overtaken and became for-profit, and all these people, like, stole money from it and stuff like that. The actually registered not-for-profit charity, Black Lives Matter. People stole money from it and bought properties and things like that.
Yeah.
They became rich off it, right? Once it gets to that stage, it's no longer a message for good, right? So if the NRL looks at it, or Melbourne Storm looks at it and goes, oh, this is not a thing anymore, right? Like, because Australia copies America, so people are leaning in this direction now. This welcome to country thing is becoming more and more politicized, more and more for profit. Maybe we should like take a step back from this, guys. And then if Melbourne Storm's gone, yeah, you're right, and we are an NRL club.
They looked.
But they look stupid.
That's the thing. When you go out there and you say you're gonna ditch it, and then you backtrack, you just look stupid. It's like another Kalen Ponga scenario where he went out there and said, oh, I don't want to play for Australia. And then he backtracked and said, yeah, I want to play. And then they were like, you're not playing now. This is the same sort of scenario. Went out there and said, yeah, we're going to ditch it. And then once they realised the backlash in such a PC society, they've backtracked, and now the Melbourne Storm look weak.
Yeah. Well, even the thing with the backlash is quite funny because I tracked it, right? You know, I'm a big internet kind of a sentiment tracker. I tracked it. The initial thing was very angry. And then it started to even out. But they overreacted to the initial because the support versus the backlash, and I was like, a lot of the support is exactly what I'm saying. Like, good, because it's been over-politicised. It's become a for-profit function. A bunch of Aboriginal, I don't know, again, like, apologise if anything, my terminology might be wrong. A lot of Aboriginal tribes and stuff have, like, said, we're not going to do this anymore because it's just a profit thing now. You know, like, so people are, like, fully supportive of Melbourne Storm's decision. But whenever you say anything, the vocal minority keyboard warriors, the angry ones will come first. The defenders will come later. So they said this, we're going to probably stop doing this. The vocal minority keyboard warriors came out and said, you guys are racist scumbags. And they went, oh, no, sorry. We didn't say that. Again, internet wayback machine. And then the defenders came, and then the Melbourne Storm can't go out and go, oh, you know what? Actually, again.
So you have to be smart enough if you're going to make an announcement like that to anticipate the haters are going to come for you at the start. And you have to be strong and defiant enough to disregard it and push through.
Weather the initial storm and then wait for your defenders to come out. That's the real message for anything that is over-politicised. Anything that's over-politicised in modern PC society. Anything like that. Gender affirmations, race relations, billionaires versus poor people, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you should get religion. A job in PR.
I hate dealing with scumbags. But onwards and upwards, I'm not going to be watching Fox Sports next season because the most boring and worst commentator I have ever seen in my history of watching rugby league, Ray Hadley, has been announced that he'll be calling some Fox games next season.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. He's announced it. It hasn't. I mean, he's good mates with Steve Crawley, the boss of Fox Sports. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but it looks like there might be something to it. As I say, unconfirmed yet. So if it doesn't happen, please don't throw stones at me on social media.
Just weather the storm. Your defenders will.
Yeah, I'll weather the storm. I need to learn from the Melbourne Storm's mistake. But yeah, I mean, he's done TV commentary before. He commentated on Channel 9.
Yep, stop watching those games when
after years of commentating on the radio. And the problem was he called it like it was on the radio when it was on TV. And you might go, oh yeah, well that's understandable given how long he called it on the radio. But it's not that hard to make the adjustment. It's very simple. You go, look, all right, how do I do it differently? You don't need to be as descriptive because the viewers can see what's going on TV as opposed to the radio where the listeners can't see what's going on, obviously. It's not rocket science. You just be less descriptive on TV. And even for someone of his experience, he couldn't make the adjustment. He was a terrible TV commentator. How's it going to be any different this time?
Yeah, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I have a picture, so you don't need to say 1,000 words, Ray.
That's the thing. It was not rocket science. Yeah. Just don't be as descriptive. And he called it exactly like it was on the radio. He was giving all this detail where it's like, no, Ray, we can see what's going on here. Yeah, we don't need you to describe everything to us. We can see it on the TV.
It was back in the and it was really hard to watch, to be honest, because it was back. He was on there. I remember back when there was 2 games on Friday night.
Yeah.
One of them was on delay.
Yeah, he always did the delayed one.
Yeah, and the problem with that is when it was on delay, they would put more ads.
Yeah.
So you
it was unwatchable.
Even longer game.
Yeah.
It's bad enough I've got Ray Hadley for 2 hours, but now I've got him for 2.5 hours with an extra half an hour of ads.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, I don't see any. Like, they've got Dan Ganane, they've got Andrew Voss.
Yeah, it's time to, he's had his day.
Yeah.
He's retired from radio. It's time to give someone else a go.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then the Golden Boot was awarded. And
what a farcical award this has become.
Time to change how it is awarded.
Yeah, I mean,
after James Fisher Harris won it. Oh no, wait, that was last year.
Yeah, Isaah Yeo won it this year. And look, we're not I guess we're not disputing that he's a worthy recipient. We're disputing the criteria for which it's judged. Now, this award's become so farcical, the Golden Boot Award. Now it's only judged on solely international games only. It's not even the performance in the NRL season or performance in the English Super League or performance in State of Origin is disregarded completely. It's not taken into account when deciding the winner. They just use internationals. There's so few internationals played each year. This year it was only the Pacific Championship, which ran for a few weeks at the end of the year.
Samoa and England.
Yeah, there was that one as well. But I mean, we're only talking about a 3 or 4 week window here at the end of the season.
The comparison, you can't compare the Pacific Championship with Australia and New Zealand for the quality of play versus England versus Samoa as well. You know, like, with the current criteria, last year it was James. This is the first time since 2017 an Australian has won it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Cameron Smith won it in 2017.
But the last year was James Fisher Harris, which New Zealanders jumped on as the greatest and best thing ever, and it proved that the Golden Boot was the best way to award things. I think it was James Fisher Harris, but again, like you see, like last year they had England versus Samoa as well. But the quality of football is going to be better in Australia versus New Zealand. So of course the Golden Boot is going to come out of that. If there's Australia versus New Zealand and England versus Samoa and Fiji versus PNG and Cook Islands and Tonga, it's only going to come out of that Australia and New Zealand team. It's only counted on internationals. And
it just shouldn't be. It shouldn't be such a limited criteria that the awards handed out. It shouldn't just be based on performance in international games. It's the Golden Boot Award. It should factor in everything. It should factor in your performance in the NRL, your performance in the Super League, your performance in the State of Origin, and your performance in internationals. It's the Golden Boot. It's the World Player of the Year. It should factor in everything, not just performance in international. So it's become a farcical award. And why, if you're going to just award it based on performances in internationals, why even call it the Golden Boot Award anymore? It should just be the International Player of the Year Award.
Well, think about it, like the Golden Boot is the best player in the world, right? Is Ivan Cleary better than Isaah Yeo better than Nathan Cleary this year?
Well, no. No. And that's the thing, because Nathan Cleary was injured, he was ineligible.
Exactly. Best Golden Boot is not the best player in the world anymore. It's the best player in the end of season international.
So it should just be International Player of the Year. It shouldn't even be. So why not? If you're going to do that, make the Golden Boot go back to what it was based on everything, and just have a separate International Player of the Year award.
Like you said, we're not bagging Isaah Yeo. That guy's one of the best players in the world.
No, and you know the thing is, the stupid thing about it, the completely stupid thing about it is, it seems like they are basing it on more than just the Australian games when making this decision, because Isaah Yeo did a whole lot more than that. Won that premiership with Penrith, won that State of Origin series with New South Wales.
Yeah, and you think about it, right? He was a captain for New South Wales, wasn't he? I can't remember. But
no, I think it was Jake Trbojevic.
Oh, yeah, it was, yeah. But Isaah Yeo was one of the best on field in Origin. He was one of the best on field all year for the Panthers, who won a premiership. There's every chance that he may have actually won it if you took into account everything. That's
the thing. I think they are, even though they're not supposed to now under these stupid rules where they're only supposed to factor in internationals. It feels like they are looking beyond that when awarding this to Isaah Yeo.
But because they only factored in international guys like Jerome Hughes. Did he play for New Zealand? He didn't play for New Zealand, right? He was out injured.
I think he was. That's why Sean Johnson came back and played. Yeah. So, but even, players like Kalen Ponga and Cameron Munster, they weren't in contention either, because they didn't play in the Pacific Championships. For Cameron Munster, it was injury. For Kalen Ponga, it was more the whole, I don't want to play. Yeah, I want to play. And then, we know what happened there.
Yeah. But it needs to go back to being actually about being the best player in the world, not just the best player for 3 games.
Yeah, just have...
only had 3 games, right? Yeah, 3 games.
There were 2 round robin and then the final.
Australia only had 3 games.
So what sort of award is this now then? As I said, Golden Boot, factor everything in and just have a separate International Player of the Year award.
He won based on 3 games when some of the New Zealand players played 4. Well, so it doesn't... can a player who only plays one international game win the Golden Boot? It's nonsense.
Well, what do they do? And I don't know what the plans are. I'm presuming they're going to keep this Pacific Championship. But there were years past where you'd only play one international a year.
Yeah.
Some years you didn't even play it. Well, when COVID was on, they went a couple of years without playing international. Had to delay the World Cup by a year because of COVID. So what would you have done in the COVID year when there was no international football? What, you just can't award the Golden Boot? It's just ridiculous.
No, it's stupid. Anyway, well, congratulations, Isaah Yeo. Again, not bagging him. He's one of the best players. I think he's one of the best players in the world.
This is not a go at him.
Yeah.
This is a go at the eligibility rules for winning it and the criteria for winning it based solely on international fixtures. What a farce. It should be based on everything.
I honestly think he's one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
So, and now we've got the PNG dollar signs have been announced.
Yes.
As we've discussed before, there's a whole bunch of things. So the NRL and the Prime Minister announced that PNG would definitely be the team that enters in 2028. The federal government's going to be giving $580 million or something to it. There's going to be tax exemptions for any players who play in the PNG.
That's a salary cap issue, isn't it?
There's also going to be a compound built for them that they'll live on that they won't have to pay rent for.
It's a salary cap issue.
No, it's not, because the club is still spending the same amount of money.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it's a big loophole.
Yeah, that's why it's the PNG dollar signs.
So what, someone on 1.2 million, let's say Jerome Luai's on 1.2 million a year, I think that's what he's on.
Yeah.
How much of that would he be taxed in Australia? What, 500 grand? Would he only get 700
40%
grand?
on the highest thing, right? I don't really know the tax brackets of the higher.
Okay, so let's say, and I don't know exactly, but let's say he pockets, 750 grand that he actually gets of his 1.2 million. Let's say he pays, I presume it'd be about 450 grand in tax he'd probably have to pay on that. But if he plays for PNG, he pockets the whole 1.2.
What did you say? I'm just using a simple tax calculator.
Yeah, so I think Jerome Luai's salary is $1.2 million a year. I think it is.
Yep. Super guarantee. And then how do I find it? Where is it? Pesaka. And then, here we go. So he would end up with $649,508.
So he'd get that, and the rest he'd pay in tax. So that's 650 grand.
Yep.
So he's paying on that 350 plus 200. So he's losing 550 of the 1.2 on tax in Australia. If he plays for PNG, he pockets the whole 1.2 million.
Well, it's not full tax exemption.
All right, so
it's something like, they haven't confirmed 100%. Right. I've heard a few rumours. Right. 50% less tax.
Okay, so let's say, all right, so he gets taxed 550 in Australia. So half of 550 is 275. Yeah. So he pockets 275 grand more on the same contract playing for PNG.
His cost of living is so much.
Yeah. So you can add that in. Well, he probably gets that a lot of the rest of that back. The 275 he loses. So if I'm Jerome Luai, I know what I'd be doing. I wouldn't be playing for the West Tigers. I'd be going to PNG.
Well, 2028. Remember, his contract's only 2 years.
Yeah. Well, the option remains available to him. I'll tell you what, they're at a huge advantage with that.
Yeah, it's seriously, it's so crazy. Obviously, that's going to be the main way they will attract players, actually. It's going to be difficult to attract players who have to go and live in PNG with their families, which is a dangerous place. They are rugby league mad. They have, full fans. They're going to build a stadium for them and stuff like that. But they are going to have to live on a compound with armed guards.
Yeah, so it does come at a cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there obviously has to... Plus you have to take your family, relocate over to a different country, all that kind of thing.
So there has to be some incentive. If there wasn't, nobody would go
there.
No, you'd still get players who'd go there for the opportunity, but you wouldn't attract the star players without some...
And that's where it really falls down, right? Because what's the minimum salary now? I think 130.
Is it 120 or 130 grand?
Like that. The average pay is 300 grand, but that's, if you have two brown haired people in a room, you're going to think the average human has brown hair. So average is not a good indicator. But so for those 120 grand guys, it's not that big of a deal, right?
Yeah, It's 120 grand, the minimum.
So, they're losing 30 grand in tax. So if it was just say it's 50%, they're going to get an extra 15 grand for the year, which is only $1,000 a month, which, I would love to have an extra $1,000 a month, wouldn't we all? But it's not that big of a deal, okay? But it is when you get into those, Jerome Luai's and stuff, because they're also going to be able to offer them unders. They're going to be able to say, Jerome Luai, I know you're on 1.2 million at the Tigers. We'll give you 1.1 million and you'll still get paid more.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be able to go to, they'll be able to do the Manly, right? We have 5 players on $5 million, but they'll be able to have them on $4 million because they're still going to get paid more.
Yeah, if the PNG team decided to sign Daly Cherry Evans and Tom Trbojevic, all of a sudden it wouldn't look so bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, they could do the 1.2 million of Daly Cherry Evans and whatever it is, 1.1 of Tom Trbojevic, but could pay them $200,000 less each. Because they'd still end up with more money in pocket.
Yeah.
And that's where it really falls down and is a massive issue.
Yeah.
When you have, salary cap doesn't make the competition even no matter what anyone says. Okay? Look at the Tigers. The outlier proves the point. Okay? Look at Melbourne. They're always in the thing. Look at Penrith winning 4 premierships in a row. And by all probability, they could win 5 in a row. Salary cap doesn't make the competition as even as the NRL wants to convince people it does. But that doesn't mean some clubs should get an extra, a few $1 million in the salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, I know we don't like to get political on here, but I'm not surprised that Albanese was there front and centre with the announcement. I mean, I think he's an opportunistic show pony.
Yeah, well, it's the PNG political China prevention team.
Yeah.
PNG is going to be fun. I can't wait to see the team. But again, it is a bit of a scam for a multitude of reasons. And then just last on the NRL Vegas next year, the NRL has confirmed that NFL legend will be
Rob Gronkowski,
right in front and centre. So he's the new Russell Crowe, basically.
He's sending loud and clear to Americans in a 30-second ad, hitting TV screens to promote the NRL in Las Vegas in 2025. Gronkowski's a 4-time Super Bowl champion, and he was in the NFL's 100th anniversary all-time team. So this is a superstar of the NRL who's been hired to promote the NRL's doubleheader in Las Vegas to open the season in 2025.
They had a conversation on Joe Rogan about rugby the other day and how hardcore it is. I can't remember who it was with. They should try and get somebody on Joe Rogan.
So were they talking about rugby union or rugby league? In their mind, it's the same thing. Yeah. They don't know the difference.
It's one of the things I learned from some of my overseas fans. Australia is the only country in the world that gets offended by the classification of, rugby is rugby union and rugby league is rugby league. Everywhere else in the world doesn't get offended by it. Yeah. Even the countries where rugby union is massive, they don't mind getting associated with rugby league. But they were talking about rugby in Australia. So my assumption it was rugby league.
Yeah, well, it may well have been. Americans aren't going to know the difference.
Exactly. But as if anybody watches rugby union in Australia. That's it for rugby league. Rugby league, not rugby, for the week. And over to cricket, as I said, the game is on. So Australia is dominating. Yeah. Isaah Yeo is racist.
Well, there's no point in us talking about the game specifically, but we can talk about this story that's come out of it. Isa Guha has apologised after she referred to Indian fast bowler Jasprit Bumrah as, quote, a primate during the third test. She was commentating on Fox Sports during the first session of play on day 2 when she made the remark. So her quote was, I'll read the whole quote. She says, well, he's the MVP, isn't he? Guha said. Most valuable primate, Jasprit Bumrah. He's the one that's going to do all the talking for India, and why so much focus was on him in the build-up to this test match and whether he would be fit. That was her quote. She issued a full statement of apology. her colleague and Indian cricket great Ravi Shastri basically, or he said, and I quote, "Brave woman to do it on live television and apologise." So she says, Shastri says she's done it. Let's move on. He's happy to move on from it. So we got another scenario where if a man had have said the same thing, they'd be sacked, never to work again. But because she's a woman, she gets away with it, just with an apology, and there's nothing to see here, and we all move on and move forward.
It's so bizarre. Like, I don't know what she was thinking.
Well, it's racist.
Yeah, technically, humans are primates. Like, but really,
it's racist.
Yeah, it was. It really brought me back memories of the Monkey Gate with Andrew Simons, and she's British of South. What is it called? Subcontinent Asia, South Asian.
South Asian heritage.
Yeah, yep. South Asians. But she's English, and But British people are pretty freaking racist, man.
But this is the thing. Like, why does it matter that she's of South Asian heritage? I mean, she made the comment.
No, that was how they were trying to justify it. She can't be racist because
so you can't be racist if you're of South Asian heritage. That doesn't make the comments are either racist or they're not. It doesn't matter who makes them or what the background is of the person who makes them.
That's the thing. Like they try to justify it by saying, people try to justify it by saying, oh, she's South Asian heritage. She's English, and English people are pretty freaking racist, man. Like, way more racist than even Australia. Like, Australia had a whole TV show with Joe Hildebrand. It was like Dumb, Drunk and Racist, where they brought a bunch of Indian students over and took them around Australia and, functioned in society with them and then asked them at the end, do you think Australia's racist? And they were like, no more than anyone else in the world. Like, thanks, guys. But, English people... Again, generalisation. There's a generalisation. Not all English people. English people, as a whole, as a generalised thing, are kind of more outspokenly racist than most other Western countries. Honestly, I think America has systemic racism, built into their culture. Same with Australia, but British people are just they want to make the world British. That was the thing. It's their policy is. Their whole country, their identity is pretty racist. So, when I say what was she thinking, I mean, what was she thinking being so stupid as to let her, racism out, her ingrained British racism out on national television?
Yeah, as I say, if a man makes the same comments, they don't work again. An apology's not... If a man makes the same comments, an apology's not enough. They're sacked, they don't work again. But for her, it's, she said sorry, so it's fine, we move on.
Yeah. Well, she had an Indian player with her.
Yeah, Ravi Shastri said it was fine, and we all move on.
He represents all India.
Yeah, so that's it. Yeah. Case closed, we move forward.
Yeah. But it is the summer of cricket and the summer of tennis. And Nick Kyrgios has 100% been confirmed that he'll be playing in the Australian Open. And he's hoping for a draw that puts him up against Jannik Sinner.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I know you don't like Jannik Sinner, but there would only be one winner if Nick Kyrgios was drawn against Jannik Sinner. There's no two ways about it. I don't know why he wants to play against Jannik Sinner, because that result would only be going one way, and that match wouldn't last very long.
I think it'll be 6-love, 6-love, 6-love.
Well,
because Jannik Sinner's got all the drugs in him. That's the only reason he dominated Nick Kyrgios. Well, if it wasn't
that, it'd be pretty close to that, I would have thought.
The only reason it'd be because of the drugs, though, not because Nick Kyrgios hasn't played for 40 years, probably isn't training, has never actually tried. Jannik Sinner is arguably the best current tennis player.
Well, it's him or Carlos Alcaraz. Yeah. It's between those two. Jannik Sinner's number one in the world at the moment.
Arguably the best current tennis player, unless Novak Djokovic comes back to form, in which Novak Djokovic automatically just takes over again.
Yeah, well, Djokovic is the number 3. I know it not officially in the rankings, but in terms of a pecking order, an unofficial world ranking, Djokovic should be number 3 behind Sinner and Alcaraz.
Obviously the GOAT, but on a downward slide, unless he comes back this year. And
with Andy Murray at coaching him.
It's really easy for Novak Djokovic to become the best player in the world.
Well, if he wins the Australian Open, if Djokovic wins the Australian Open, he's back to the top of the tree.
You think about Carlos Alcaraz wins the Australian Open and beats Jannik Sinner, you go, those two guys are the two best tennis players in the world. But if Novak Djokovic wins the Australian Open, Novak Djokovic is just back to being the best in the world.
Yeah, that's it. So but this
against Nick Kyrgios, who hasn't played in... Seriously, like, when was the last time he played?
Well, he hasn't actually played a match since we've been doing the podcast. So I'm pretty sure it was maybe June 2023. So every time we've talked about him on this podcast, and it's a lot of times, we've been talking about everything else he's been doing, all the talk, everyone he's been sniping at on social media. That's been the discussion points. We actually haven't talked about Nick Kyrgios playing a match in our time doing the podcast. And I actually did an article about this last week. Nick Kyrgios sniped at Tennis Australia for giving Jannik Sinner's coach, who's an Australian, Darren Cahill. He also coached Leighton Hewitt in the past, and Andre Agassi had success with those two players. They gave him a 2024 Coaching Excellence Honour at the Australian Tennis Awards, and Kyrgios sniped at that. He posted on social media, "This is a joke, right? Have some class and integrity, people." And I know you could make the argument that they shouldn't really be honouring Cahill for what he's done with Sinner because of this. I mean, this whole appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, this WADA appeal that's going on. Well, wouldn't it be a farce if Jannik Sinner gets a ban after they're not happy with the original sanction, given what he's achieved in the time since then? He won the US Open. He won the Australian Open that came just before this incident at Indian Wells. He won the Davis Cup this year. He won the ATP Finals. It would look pretty silly if he gets a ban and now they've honoured his coach. But all that having been said, it's Nick Kyrgios. He's throwing stones from a glass house here. This is not somebody who should be getting on their moral high horse. Nick Kyrgios, he's talking about class and integrity. He never shows class or integrity. He attacks the umpire. He attacks his opponents. He attacks people in the crowd. This guy's got no respect for tennis at all. He's not the one to be getting on his moral high horse, lecturing everybody about what's right and wrong.
No, definitely not. Like, the fact that he uses the words class and integrity cracked me up.
Seriously.
Speaking of WADA, actually, I found out an interesting thing the other day. They're having an issue right now with drug testing around the world. With all of the companies or organisations that are linked to them. There's now been a few instances in the year. I think in August, they released a statement about USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Authority that represents WADA and tests all of the Olympic athletes and previously tested for the UFC, all the professional sports in America, basically. USADA has been doing this thing that is against WADA rules, where when people test positive, they let them keep competing and let them keep testing positive as long as they dob in other people.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. So apparently...
Well, that just turns the whole thing into a farce then.
That WADA, has basically revealed that, we found this out. Because one of the things you can do is dob in others for a reduced sentence, which is a suspicion about what John Jones did and where it all failed. The initial fall down of USADA and the UFC, they reckon John Jones, when he got popped, because he got a very short suspension, they reckon he dobbed everyone in and said, these are all the people that I know that take drugs. And, a lot of things happened. First of all, the UFC changed their policy so they won't be revealing publicly failed drug tests. And everyone was like, why? Then John Jones left Jackson Wink, the gym he'd been with for 20 years. And there was a suspicion, wait a second. They said it was because, he had an altercation with his wife, but it was kind of around the same time. Something's going on here. But then, WADA's released a statement saying... So, apparently, USADA has been letting people compete in professional sports while testing positive and basically using them as moles. And then you have things like whoever does the tennis testing, letting, lots of we discussed Halep and Swiatek. Varied suspensions last week, and Jannik Sinner getting off completely. So WADA is on a tear at the moment, because if we need a second Icarus documentary. If it keeps going, we're going to find out that it wasn't just Russia who was doing state-sanctioned cheating, since 1985. It could be everyone. And they've gone and torn medals away from people from as far back as 1985 for the Olympics. it could be like everyone.
This is the thing, like, how many of these cases don't we know about? How many people have gotten away with it and won gold medals in Olympic Games? And I mean, Lance Armstrong's the obvious example in the Tour de France. Obviously, I mean, he had 7 Tour de France titles stripped. Obviously he's not. Obviously, there are other riders who have won the Tour de France tainted.
Well, he wouldn't name names, but he did talk about like they'd be on the bus putting their syringes into a aluminium can that they'd throw out onto the road. You know, when he's talking about on the bus, he's talking about with the team USA.
And the thing about Armstrong was the theory around him is that what triggered the whole, the ramping up of the investigation into him was the fact that he came back and then Floyd Landis wanted a job on his team and he told Floyd Landis to go get lost, and then Landis went, well, stuff you, I'm going to out you to the authorities now. The theory is that if he not come back and upset Landis like that and triggered this, there's a good chance he would have gotten away with winning 7 Tour de France's on drugs.
The cycling is really like one of those things where everyone is on drugs except the people that I support and my friends.
Yeah.
It really is. That's what the documentary Icarus is about. It's a guy after all the Lance Armstrong thing, and Lance Armstrong basically said, no, everyone is on drugs, except of course Cadell Evans, because he's Aussie and he won something, I don't know what.
I think it might have been the 2011 Tour de France.
So the guy in Icarus was going to do a bike ride and then find somebody to help him cheat, and then do a bike ride, the same bike ride the next year after taking steroids for you to see what his improvement was like. And he was referred until he came across and was referred to the head of the Russian anti-doping authority that told him, I know how you can cheat, and this is how you can cheat. And when he asked him, like, how do you know? He's like, I do it for all the Russian Olympians. Like, you do it for the what now? So if you watch that documentary, halfway through the documentary changes. Am I in there for season 2 right now? Like, it's really bizarre, and it only comes out because people dob it in, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking up the Tour de France winners. Yeah, between 1999 and 2005, it's blank because those are the years that Armstrong won. So that's like next level Melbourne Storm.
Exactly. Then you have things like, the Cronulla Sharks and whatever AFL football team that Stephen Denk was involved in.
Essendon, yeah.
Essendon. They were on peptides for years, and they see that one's like, I feel bad for the players because, like they always say, like even though NRL is a professional sport, they're a lot less sophisticated. The players and stuff are a lot less sophisticated in this knowledge. I've talked about Khalil Roundtree and Jordan Burroughs, and there's levels to this game. Like even for drugs, like Khalil Roundtree realised that his supplement he'd taken was tainted and self-reported. Jordan Burroughs wouldn't even take coffee from Joe Rogan because wrestling is so strict about it. There are levels to it. In the NRL and the AFL previously, and I would hope the guys have changed, the team doctor comes and says, I'm just going to inject you with this. And you go, okay. It is the players or the athlete's responsibility to know what they're getting injected with. But yeah, the NRL guys, players and stuff were so unsophisticated before that issue. They just trusted that the doctor and the medical staff, what was his name? The mongoose or something? The gazelle. Whatever the gazelle was spraying was legal, right? And then you actually have to get to the point where you're like Jordan Burroughs. If you don't want to take drugs, you can't even, or risk getting tainted, you can't even take coffee from Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
When you're on his podcast and you drink it from your own water bottle that you and your team have prepared.
Yeah, the stupid thing about Essendon was the year that they got sprung doing it. They started the year really well when they were juiced up. But then they fell away towards the end of the year. It didn't even really work for them. I don't think they even made the 8 the year that they did it. I think they started off really well. They won a lot of their early games. I think they were on top of the ladder halfway through. But then they just fell in a heap after that. So it had this weird effect where it benefited them for only half the season and then they fell away after that.
Like the thing with all those performance-enhancing drugs that people don't really understand is they don't make you better. It's the game that you play. They make you stronger, and you be able to train more, and you are able to recover better. That's what they do. So you will be stronger recover more and be able to train more, so you can get faster and do more plyometric training or whatever. But if a person who is better at the game than you comes along, they will generally beat you. So yeah, like that's what the thing was with Essendon and the Sharks as well. You know, like they couldn't win the premiership on peptides, and it's because other teams were just simply better than them. You know, just better than them at the game.
Yeah, you just got me looking up these Tour de France winners. So Cadel Evans was the only Aussie to win it, and it was in 2011.
Wasn't on drugs. He's the only one.
Yeah.
All the rest.
But everyone else tainted.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Jannik Sinner and Nick Kyrgios. If they end up playing in the Australian Open, Jannik Sinner is going to wipe Nick Kyrgios. It would only be... I don't expect Nick Kyrgios to win anything in the Australian Open. It's just... guy that played for years.
No, it's just... He's all talk. This is the thing, that the odds that they'll actually... I mean, to be honest, I really hope they play against each other. As much as you don't like Jannik Sinner, I'd love to see Jannik Sinner just...
No, I'd love to see him wipe Nick Kyrgios.
So... Yeah, I'd love to see that happen, but you know the odds of that happening. I mean, the draw is completely random. I mean, Jannik Sinner will obviously play against an unseeded player in the first 2 rounds. Every seeded player plays unseeded players in the first 2 rounds. But the odds that would be Kyrgios. I mean, there's 128 players in the draw. There's 32 seeds. So out of the other 96 players, he's just going to happen to draw Kyrgios? The odds of that are so far-fetched. And Kyrgios talks it up like it's going to happen. He talks it up because he knows it won't. Well, it's a highly... All right, there's a 1 in 96 chance it'll happen, right? That's how unlikely it is. I'm not going to say it definitely won't happen because there's a 1 in 96 chance. I'll put that out there. But that's how remote a possibility is. So he knows it's a remote possibility, and that's why he gets he's all big with his talk, isn't he? He knows it's probably not going to happen, so I can talk big against Jannik Sinner. I'll tell you what, I'd love to see it happen.
I really want to
we know what would happen if it happens.
Strangely, Stan Wawrinka is also a wild card entry.
Yeah, he really needs to follow Andy Murray and Rafael Nadal into retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last but not least, our best friend Donald Trump.
Yes.
He's getting around, man. He's doing a lot of interviews. He's going to sporting events. So he attended the Army-Navy football game on the weekend. Yep. Navy defeated Army 31-13 on Saturday to take home the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. So it was his trophy, apparently. So there you go. The annual game there, played between the Army and the Navy. Donald Trump in attendance. I did watch the Donald Trump podcast with Joe Rogan. I was looking for something to do. Lincoln bedroom? You interested in the Lincoln bedroom? That's what he talks about for the first 20 minutes, the Lincoln bedroom. Oh, did he? You'd think I would remember the first 20 minutes. So boring. But one thing I've noticed about Trump, and it wasn't just that podcast, but I watched a few interviews with him as well, and it's got to add to his appeal with people, is everything he says, you listen to and you can't say this about any other politician. You listen to every word the guy says. He's got cuts through. He cuts through to people. He hits you right in the. He just blows you away with his communication. You listen to everything he says. Compare him to Anthony Albanese. Anthony Albanese speaks, and it's the most uninspiring speech you've ever seen in your life. I can't think of anything he's ever said. Yeah, whereas Donald Trump speaks, you listen to every word. Every word. You can't look away when Donald Trump's talking. Yeah, definitely not. It's like he's got the thing where he'll tell the story. But the first 20 minutes is a really hard watch on that thing because he talks. Because Joe Rogan asked him. No, it's after the discussion about The View. And then he asked him, like, what's it like when you first enter? And he talks about how he goes and tours the Lincoln bedroom. And he talks about the Lincoln bedroom for like 20 minutes. And then Joe Rogan has to try and get him back on track multiple times. And so a lot of people block that part out. Yeah, because that's the thing. I remember the start of it now. I remember he says, at the start of it, Joe Rogan says, when you first started on The View, they loved you. They loved you. And now look at you. And then Joe Rogan talks about, and this is the thing, I'm not one of these people who's just going to give it to Trump at every opportunity, right? I'm not a hardcore lefty or anything. But I mean, Joe Rogan would say things like, now you're probably one of the most criticised people of all time, or they give it to you all the time. It's like, well, he did incite an insurrection on the Capitol building. He did
deny the legitimacy of the 2020 election, even though there's no evidence to suggest that it was rigged at all.
So many documents.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, without going too deep into it, it's like,
oh yeah,
like people will say stuff like, "Oh, you're so maligned, you're so criticised." It's like, well, yeah, I mean, you've done a bit to bring on the criticism as well.
He tweeted, "I hate Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is one of the most popular people in the world. Of course, every single teenage girl is going to criticise Donald Trump if you say I hate Taylor Swift." I think I've told you before, I once called Taylor Swift a sanctimonious blowhard to 4 10-year-old girls at jiu-jitsu. And it was the first time at jiu-jitsu I've ever been afraid for my life.
Yeah.
So I was like, she's a sanctimonious blowhard. And they're like, what does that mean? And then I explained what sanctimonious blowhard means. And the looks, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get murdered. So of course he's the most maligned person in the world. He said, I hate Taylor Swift on Twitter.
If you incite a riot on the Capitol building based completely on the false premise of an election being rigged, when it clearly wasn't and there's no evidence of it, and then you continue to deny the legitimacy of the election, and you intimidate election officials into overturning the result, you are going to get a bit of criticism for that. I think.
I've got so many documents that show it to you. So show it to me. Now he's just a bloody, for me, it sounds like that. But apparently he's going to release the JFK files, which is what I'm really interested in. I want to know.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
He already released enough that, that the CIA was involved. But now I want him to release them all so we can find out that the CIA actually did kill JFK and use Lee Harvey Oswald as a patsy. I'm so pumped for that. And the most exciting thing about the Donald Trump presidency.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I find it very entertaining and everything. It's a circus. It's like a
real life soap opera.
It's a circus, and I love the circus. I've got to admit that. But it's sort of like just you got to expect criticism with this magnitude of offences that he's committed.
Especially with the internet.
Yeah.
That's it for the week. Don't forget to go to optimumcbd.store to purchase all your CBD needs. Must be over 18 to order. Orders over $99 get free shipping. Follow at SmartB app on all social media. And check out our Smart Play, SmartB Fantasy Cricket, Daily Fantasy Cricket, where you can enter and win real cash prizes. It's launched on Sunday with the Big Bash League. We are refining a whole bunch of things on it because Big Bash League obviously isn't the most popular sport in Australia, but it will also be ready for NRL and AFL seasons for the NRL and AFL. Somebody last night won like $60 worth of SmartB coins. I can't remember the name.
Not bad.
So it cost $10 or something to enter a game, and then that person won $60.
Yeah, not bad at all.
More people playing, more people winning. Plus, there's daily lucky draws, big and small cash prizes to go to people. That's it for the weekend, and I think this will be our last one. Merry Christmas to everyone. We are going to do a podcast during the Christmas break, but it won't be next week. So Merry Christmas to everyone, and hope you have a happy New Year.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the year. It's been fun as always, and
Definitely.
We'll see you soon.